This is the May market report for Washtenaw County. And as you would expect, the news is good news. All the indicators that are supposed to be pointing up are pointing up. All the indicators that should be pointing down and the good news down are pointing down. So Washtenaw still remains one of the strongest, if not the strongest county in the state of Michigan. And all the activity points to that. Probably the driving force from a buyer standpoint and frustration from the sellers and smiles on their face is the fact that Washtenaw still struggles with enough homes to sell. The inventory actually in April shrunk just 1%, but shrunk a little bit. It only rose a little bit in March, whereas the rest of the counties in southeast Michigan, we're seeing a rise in inventory. In Washtenaw, it's still a struggle. And of course, buyers are waiting to grab every listing that pops in the marketplace. But the good news, therefore, is that values are rising. Price per square foot is up. New listings entering the market was also up, which is a good sign. One of the things that we look for in a healthy market is that the number of new listings coming on the market is continuing to rise. New buyers may rise faster, and therefore net inventory starts to fall. But the healthy sign is that sellers are seeing that the values are rising and seeing it's a good time to put their home on the market. And certainly this time of year is always a good time, but it's unusually a good time in Washtenaw County. If you're ever thinking of selling this year, now is the time to put your home on the market because activity is really strong for the next few months. But that's still a healthy sign. Sellers are seeing that, so we want to see new listings entering the market continue to rise. As you can expect, days on market were down, number of home sales were up, all good things in the marketplace. So overall, it's moving just as we expected. Good news for the county and good activity across the board. Two other things I want to address that aren't necessarily market related, but they are consumer related and how you approach the market. One is an issue on a new fraud that's in the marketplace, and although it's going to happen rarely, if it does happen, it can be a significant issue. And the other is a change in the mortgage laws, which affect how mortgages are handled and affect the transaction, the timing it takes in transactions. So we'll start with the fraud warning first. And realtors have been given this warning as well, so we're sort of pushing this across the market for consumers. That is, there's a group of very creative criminals who are infiltrating emails during a real estate transaction, seeing that there is a real estate transaction and a closing, and then they're impersonating either the realtor or the title company, saying that and sending wire instructions to the buyer, impersonating the title company, and when the buyer sees that and they send their money to that wire, of course now the criminal has the money, not the seller, and it can be disastrous, and it's very difficult, if impossible, once the money is gone to ever get it back. So it's been rare, but it has happened in Michigan. It's happened across the country. So our strong suggestion to all particular buyers is when you get wire instructions, and by the way, these criminals will also occasionally call representing the title company. So it can be email or a phone call. Make sure that whenever you get wire instructions that you as a buyer call someone that you know, whose voice you know or see in person, and confirm those wire instructions. So you want to make sure you always get wire instructions voice to voice with someone that you know and trust. If you do that, 99, even 100% of the time, that will be fine. The second issue I mentioned was the change in law, and it's the final implementation of the Dodd-Frank law, which you don't need to get all the details in, but from the real estate industry and mortgage industry, it is an important piece, and it came out of the financial crisis and the ability for lenders to provide better disclosures and better information to borrowers. It involves a new and better closing statement for buyers and sellers, but it also involves some disclosures and some informational flow from the mortgage company to the buyers that will slow down the approval process. So the implementation starts August 1st, and we'll get into probably more details about this in June and July in our market reports as well. But just as an overview, just an anticipation that if you plan on or anticipate closing a real estate transaction on the buyer or the seller side from probably July forward, understand that the mortgage approval process for the buyer will probably take longer, as much as 10 to 15 days longer. And the closing date will probably need to be flexible in that regard, because the mortgage company may make some changes that will force the closing date typically to go out longer. So therefore, you need to be wary of things like back-to-back closings, where you're closing in the morning on your home to sell your home and then to buy your new home in the afternoon. If you're buying a home and you're planning on having the mover arrive that same day of closing, those issues may be more difficult to manage. And all of our realtors will be trained on the process and understand and help you work through the timing of the closing. But just sort of as a heads up of where some changes that could affect the way a transaction evolves in the second half of this year. So I hate to end on a negative note with those two things, so we'll end on a positive note and a reminder that the market is doing wonderful and these issues are small and minor, but they're still good to know. And on a really good positive note for our organization as a whole statewide, we did something no one has ever done in Michigan history. We had over $500 million in sales in 1 month, which is a wonderful effort on everyone's part to do a really wonderful job, and expect even better news for the rest of the year. So that's the report. Thank you.